Fans of Horus Heresy, Rogal Dorn, and not having any mould slips, thank you very much for joining me for a quick video. Well, I don't know if it will be a quick video, where I'm going to try fix the mould slips on Rogal Dorn's torso. So here we have Rogal Dorn, or his torso at least, and if you've watched my unboxing video of this character series miniature by Forge World, you'll know that I identified some rather prominent mould slips here, and then also here and there between the legs. So these are pretty significant, but I'm going to have a go at fixing them rather than requesting a replacement, because I think it can be done in this instance, and also this is a pre-release miniature, so it might be quite I don't know how easy it will be to get a replacement in a timely manner. That's what we're going to try to do. We're going to have a go at it. For this video, I'm probably not going to talk as much as I normally do. It'll probably be mainly me modelling, and I'm a bit pushed for time for doing videos at the moment, so I'm probably not going to edit this as precisely as I would normally do. And my aim here is just to give you a demonstration of how you can, with some simple tools, put right quite significant mould slips like this. Obviously, I've got a lot of experience doing models and working with the scalpel, files, etc. So this isn't perhaps the easiest thing to do, but I'm just showing you it can be done. All right, before we start on that, we'll have a quick run through the tools. Shouldn't need many tools here. Firstly, we've got a scalpel. This is my preferred craft knife of choice. Brand new blade, so this is really sharp, so high risk of me cutting myself. And then we've also got a needle file that we might need for a little bit of work. And then finally, a metal bradawl spike, which may also be of use for rescribing some details. As always, we've got our good old friend Dusty Brush. And in case we need it, I don't think we will, I've got a FlexiPad 1500 grit coarse sanding pad. There you go, so let's go. So here's the torso. This is currently on the key. I'm going to keep it on the key because that's just going to help me with manipulating the model a little bit. And I'm going to start with this slip here. So the first thing to do with attempting something like this is to try to pick out the line of what it should be. And the issue is there's about 0.5 millimeter displacement here, and this should be a single continuous line. But this side has been displaced up relative to this side. I've got to kind of pick out a new, shall we say, line for this. And that's just what I'm going to do. But of course you've then got to think about how the rest of the model will change as a result. You need to blend the new line into the rest of the detail carefully to make sure it ends up looking right. So see what I've done there. Now, this was supposed to be straight, but it's not quite straight. Now, I think it's not really going to be too noticeable given where it is on the model. So I'm not going to do too much else really to adjust that. No, I'm just going to clean up this bit here. So you have to bear in mind his arms will be around, and they're going to obscure the visibility of this belt. Now looking at the underneath of his chest cuirass, I just need to cut in, get that line redefined a little bit, maybe a little bit more later. And as I'm doing this, I'm trying to make cuts that remove as little material as possible and have as little effect on the miniature as I can. And that's quite a lot of a trick of doing corrections like this, putting these mold slips right, is just having the eye to pick out how to make the correction with the least amount of adjustments. Well, or perhaps making the least drastic changes to the model. Of course, what I'm also having to do here is, as I've slightly changed the profile by taking this rather unsightly mould seam away, I'm having to very carefully reprofile the whole, well, or the adjacent parts of the armour plate into the area I've corrected to maintain a sort of a smooth profile. Not too bad, it's starting to take shape here. If I do lose focus, apologies. As you can imagine, this is quite delicate work to film, and my priority is clearly looking after this model, which isn't actually mine. This has been loaned to me for review. By a subscriber, Mr. Matt Briggs. So at the moment, I'm sure while Matt's watching, he's going to be having kittens. Am I going to put a foot wrong with his Rogal Dorn? I've not put a foot wrong yet really, so hopefully we're going to be okay. Okay, just got a little kink there in the armour. I'm not going to cut any more of that away. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and fill that with milliput back to the belt. I'm going to cut just a little bit away at the end to try level the profile a touch. I mean, with a model such as this, one of the character series, which costs £70, these are very expensive miniatures, real collector's pieces, although they do, you can use them for gaming, but really these are very fine collectibles. At these sorts of prices, you want to get the most out of your model. A lot of people will buy miniatures like this as subjects for painting competitions. And if you get faults like this, it's important that you do correct them and remove them. It was only at the weekend of the Horus Heresy weekend a few days ago that I heard from one of the people who had entered the competition. They'd done quite well. The thing that knocked them out of the running was a mould line that they'd missed on the model. And when the judges spotted it, with everything else being equal, that led to other entries going further as opposed to theirs. So if you're going for high level painting competitions, you need to be cleaning up anything like this on your miniature. I mean, I think in all fairness, if you were so inclined, you would be well within your rights to request a replacement from Forge World if you were to get a model like this yourself, because this is, as a character series model, this should really be flawless. There shouldn't really be any casting faults on it. However, as I say, you know, sometimes ordering parts from Forge World can take a long time. You know, it might be a long time to get delivery, and you know, sometimes, particularly if you're an overseas customer of Forge World, it can be a long wait to get those parts. So it's a difficult call as to whether or not to attempt to put faults right or to get the replacement. Sometimes it's obvious that parts are completely duff and need replacing, but ones like this are what I'd call the corner cases. Well, certainly for someone of my experience, I can see a way through it. Not everyone may be able to do that, in which case, you know, it's time to say, can I have a replacement please, Forge World, for this faulty part on my £75 model. That's what this costs, isn't it? Yeah, £75. Right. That's looking pretty good, that. You can see we've reprofiled the belt, we've taken the mould slip away, just put a little bit in there, redefined the join between his thigh armour plates and the belt, and then we've also cleaned up on the cuirass on his torso. And as I say, we're going to come back and fill that little imperfection there later. Right, now let's have one last look at that. Maybe just a touch more here. Yeah, happy with that. Maybe just a little bit more to do here. Yeah, that's good. One thing that is good, or a good characteristic of resin, is it's very forgiving for putting mistakes right in a way that plastic will never be. So although you are more likely to encounter casting faults on resin, it's also much easier to put them right. So I'm going to leave it at that for now there, and we're now going to have a look at between the thighs. So I think at this point we're going to remove the key. A bonus tool, got a little pair of clippers here. There we go, that'll do. Don't need to. I'll take these posts off later. Right. So we can see the nature of the problem. And the mould slip here affects all of these plates, the ribbing, and then this groin armour as well. The displacement isn't so pronounced on his left leg, it's worst on the right. So, and then we've got the groin as well. Right, where shall we start? Maybe a bit trickier to film because of the focal position, but we shall see how we do. Right, I'm going to have a go at the groin first, see how that works. I've got a little shim to take away there. Right, let's do the shim. So when I say a shim, it's kind of like a little air channel or air runoff channel. There we go. One thing with working on an area of the model such as this is it is actually quite obscured from view. So we do have a bit of room for liberty in terms of this cleanup compared to as if it was a very pronounced and visually apparent part of the final model. We'll have to be much more careful there. And certainly in terms of where we got to finally. As you can probably imagine, all the knife work here is pretty careful stuff. I'm going to start working on the left leg. We'll see how that shapes up. We'll be very careful here. So these tiny little stud details. So I need to take this mould slip away without damaging those. So this is great fun. Now I'm just rescribing the detail, so the partition or the join between the rings of his leg armour, because the mould slip has slightly distorted the profile. Very careful indeed here not to take those studs away. I mean, the mould makers have done their job in terms of where they've positioned the mould where they've cut the mould here, because on this side, admittedly, we get some focus. This side, in terms of where the mould cut was, so where our slip is better because it's further away than these very fine stud details. Here it's just a little bit, I mean, it's not running over the studs, which is an absolutely dreadful place to cut the mould, but it is still running rather close to where they are. Right, now I'm just starting to do a little bit of work around this ribbing on his the rear of his knee joints. It's coming along. It really is rather tricky to try and get a good camera shot of this, given its position, but we shall persevere. I'm just going to take these two little shims away as well. Well, one shim actually. Okay. Let's see, can we get a shot there? Yeah. I think that's probably there. Yeah. Don't really want to do any more there because it's all getting a little bit close to those rivet details. And that looks good, and I think that the obvious profile of the slip has gone. So that's good. Pleased with that. That worked really rather well. I'm just going to do a little bit straightening up this groin section before we move on to the more challenging left-hand leg. Is that left-hand leg? Yeah, I might have got my left and right confused earlier. Did I? Oh, I don't know. Anyway, doesn't really matter. Not in this instance anyway. Let's start with the left-hand side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take down the ridge first, just by cutting it away. And then we've got an extra challenge with this bit here because of the ribbing details. We'll get to that in due course. Right, now we want the file. And what we're going to do now is just very carefully sand or file the area that I was working on with the knife to smooth the profile back down. You could do this with a knife, potentially, but I think a file works rather well. Again, very careful because we've got those stud details just on the inside of the leg there, which we don't want to obliterate, and they're very fine, so they're extremely easy to obliterate. Oh gosh, got a bit of cramp in my hand there from I'm working at a slightly unnatural angle here because of the camera. I'll tell you, this is actually just let's just cut this gate down a little bit, and this one down as well. Of course, what's the camera? Of course, the camera's trying to focus on a certain nearby object. No, it might be picking those up. Okay, that's better. So we can see the leg we've already done. Ooh, now. No, that should be there, shouldn't it? Or should it? That should be there. That little ridge there is actually part of his armour. I couldn't quite tell, but it is, so I'm not going to touch that. Back to this side. Okay, so smooth it down. What I'm going to do now is reprofile the seams on the armour joints. So you can actually get it. I want to try to show you what I'm doing, but at the same time I've got to actually have my arms at an angle I can work with without making an error. And when I say reprofile, I'm just manually recutting the depression that is kind of like the boundary between the two armour plates. There we go. That's working quite nicely, really, isn't it? Again, we see that we've got some tiny little stud details running down the centre rear of his thigh that we have to be mindful of when we're working, as to not damage or very easily obliterate those very fine, small details. Details, that sounds like the introduction of the film Dune, doesn't it? Send a third stage guild navigator to the planet Kaitane to demand details of the plan. The spice must flow. Well, that's not an exact quote, but yeah, It was that. That was the interesting pronunciation of the word details. Right, talking of details, let's get back to this. I think we'll just have to have some bad focus for a few minutes while I work around this. It's a little bit tricky to try get it all lined up, so apologies for that, but what I'm doing is I'm just smoothing the surface of the armor plates down a bit further. Very careful shaving motions with the edge of the scalpel, very, very careful indeed, just to kind of bring the profile to a nice smooth one like the rest of the armor plate and remove any roughness from the filing. I mean, and here we have an example of what I would call your eye can only see what your eye can see. Although I'm slightly changing the profile of the armor plates here, when someone looks at the model, they'll never tell because they don't know what it would have looked like if it was originally cast without the A mod slip. So as long as it all kind of lines up with itself, it doesn't matter if you change your profile a little bit of parts on a model when you clean them up. As long as you do it carefully and subtly. Yeah, it's a useful technique. That's looking pretty good now. Got it in a good focal position, and of course it's a position that is rather difficult to get the knife in to work. Shall we do what we can though? There's a number of ways, there's a number of ways you can rescribe details like this. I'm doing it all with the tip of a knife, which I suppose just suits my style. You could also use the edge of a needle file to do it. I think in the case of this part here though, the furrow that I'm rescribing is a little bit fine to do that. So hence the choice of a knife blade. Okay, I'm fairly happy with that. I might just do a touch more off camera to finish it. So I can get my angles a bit better, not working around the camera. But I think more or less that's where I wanted to get it. So you can see, at least if I can get the camera focus, there you go. You can see we've rescribed. Well, we've removed the mold line, the mold slip, so it wasn't a mold line. Then I've rescribed the furrows that separate those two armor plates. What we're now going to finish up with doing is having a go at this little tricky area here. There's two things we need to do with this. We've got this very fine ribbing detail, as we may or may not be able to see. There you go, yeah? How close can, there we go. You can see it perfectly there. Very fine ribbing detail, so that all needs rescribing. I also need to recut the profile of this armor plate here to restore a smooth edge. Now I'm going to see what I can do with the knife, but I've got to be careful not to take too much away. So I might actually need to end up using some milliput to just build it up a touch. We'll see though, we may be able to do with the knife. And that's the other thing as well, you know, there's a couple of bits you'll have mentioned that I'll use milliput on with this model, don't be afraid not, you know, to do stuff like that. Don't feel you have to clean everything up with a knife. Think, well, how much can I realistically remove, and would it be better to fill instead of trying to cut it all away? So that's that then. I'm just going to rather destructively cut the ridge away, which now means I have to recut all these very tiny little fine ridges. Now, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, as many of you will probably have either heard me say or noticed from the way I work. So you may or may not have the patience for a task like this. Not too hard. The way I do it is I locate the knife onto the furrow, I roll it forward, and I just cut it out gently. It's just a case of repeating that about probably 15 times, locating each furrow and cleaning it out in sequence. Yeah, very careful, gentle knife work this. That's the first pass, right? Let's see if we can get that nice close-up focus again. Not bad. Still, you can still see there's a bit of a ridge around here. So let's go back in and see if we can get rid of that. That bit there next. Getting there. Looks a little bit messy at the moment. Yeah, that's not too bad. I might do a little bit more work on that off camera. There's a couple of those ribs that just need realigning, but more or less that's there. You can see just about, you can actually hide a mould slip even in what would have first appeared to be a completely unrepairable location. That said though, clearly this is important, or this is why it's important that Forge World don't send out parts like this, because it's really beyond a reasonable expectation to be putting stuff like this right. I mean, looking at the time on the video now, we're on to just under well, we're coming up to 43 minutes. So yeah, so I spent 43 minutes there. So by the time I've done the last few bits off camera, probably the best part of an hour fixing what is a production fault on this model. If it hadn't have been a fault, I could probably have got a lot, you know, maybe 80% of all the other parts ready in the space of time. It just took me to put these few faults right, but put them right I have. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, I've done an awful lot of this sort of work on, you know, the several hundred Forge World miniatures I've built, but this is the first time. Is this the first character series model I've done? I mean, I did touch Magos Dracovac, although that was different. They didn't have anything quite like this to fix. Right, I'm going to call it there. So let's see if we can get one last look around the repaired inner legs. There you go. Oops, have I just got a little bit of stuff to pick out there. Maybe just a touch, that's all right. Yeah, pretty good. And then we've got the belt that we fixed earlier. Well, so there you have it. A demonstration of how to put right a really rather nasty mould slip on a resin miniature. In this case, Forge World's Rogal Dorn from their character series of miniatures. I hope you found this an interesting and useful demonstration. Let me know what you think about what I've demonstrated here. You know, as I said, I'm not saying that everyone should try fix faults like this that they get on Forge World models. I am just doing this as a little demo to show what you can do if you've got the experience and ability to do it. But yeah, all the same, do share your thoughts. You know, if you do stuff like this and you've got any useful hints and tips to share with the viewers, please do put those in the comments. That'll be really interesting to hear. But other than that, I'd just like to say thank you very much for watching. I'll speak to you next time, and goodbye.